Okay, hello and welcome everyone. My name is Lisa McNally and I'm the Director of Professional Development on the IBC Asia Pacific Board. We have been running these webinar programs now for a few months and they have, well, probably nearly 6 months actually, and they've been very, very successful. And today we have a fantastic topic to share with you. But before we start, I just wanted to do another little plug for our upcoming regional conference in Singapore, Fusion. You can find out more about this on our IBC Asia Pacific website. It's going to be a fantastic event. We've got amazing speakers lined up, commencing on the 23rd of August with a Leadership Institute, followed by 2 days of conference and then another day of workshops for those who want to stay on. So please do go and sign up. There's some great rates for members and some really excellent speakers. So I encourage you to go and have a look at that and let me know if you have any questions about it. It's going to be a brilliant event. So enough of the promotions. I'm going to now introduce you to our speaker today, and I'm thrilled to introduce Rebecca Sleeman, who's Social Media Strategist and Program Manager at Telstra. Rebecca's been in the industry for 10 years now, commencing after university with an internship in journalism. And from there she landed her first role as a video journalist for the Daily Telegraph, where she began working online in content. Since then, and prior to her work at Telstra, Rebecca was based in New York, where she led social planning and strategy for clients, including Oreo, Clinique, and Kraft at 360i. So today, Rebecca's going to share with us a Gold Quill award-winning program that was launched to educate Telstra employees on the value of social media, both personally and professionally, and how it empowered employees at Telstra to share the Telstra story in the way that was right for them. So I'd like to now hand over to Rebecca to get started.
Great, thank you very much, Lisa, for that warm introduction and obviously the opportunity to talk about Telstra Ignite today. When I got the invitation, I realised that there was quite a few countries represented on the line and some people in India getting up very early. So thank you for tuning in. You're doing much more than I was at 7:30 in the morning. So Lisa asked me to talk about Telstra Ignite, which is a program that we're lucky enough to be recognised for at the Golden Quill Awards this year, and in fact have the awards dinner tonight in Melbourne. So we're all very much looking forward to that. But I thought before I dive into a bit more detail about the program, I'd do a quick poll to sort of kick things off. And the question I wanted to just get a sense from everyone on the line was, who are you most likely to connect with or be influenced by on social media? So I think Lisa's loading up the poll. Yep, there it is. So we've got a couple of options there. You've got friends and family, colleagues and industry peers, celebrities or opinion leaders, journalists and news media, or brands, or someone completely different to that. So if you want to log your responses. We'll just see if those answers are coming in. Okay. So while I wait for the answers to pop up, the results to pop up there, I'll start by sort of saying, I suppose the interesting thing about this program, and when we talk about strategies and how we use social media as a brand, we often think, or certainly we did, is think mostly in terms of how we can engage customers and our audience on social media as a brand. And this is obviously very important, and it's ultimately a big chunk of our social media strategy at Telstra. But this program itself was actually more about how we can engage our people and empower them to use social media to tell our story. And I just see that some of the responses have come in now, and yeah, the overwhelming majority of people have mentioned friends and family being the the audience or the people that influence the most on social media, which is not surprising, followed by, looks like journalists and news media, colleagues and industry peers. So the thing that's kind of consistent with this feedback is that it's people that you're saying are the ones that have the biggest influence on you, which is not surprising. So for this presentation, I'll talk to you firstly about kind of the opportunity, what we saw with Ignite and why we went about launching this program. And then I'll also talk a little bit about what we did, and I'll try and focus sort of more on a few of the learnings that we gained along the way. So I realised that there might be a few people from APAC on the line who've not heard of Telstra before, potentially. So for some quick context, Telstra is Australia's largest telecommunications company, and we have about 33,000 employees, and that's both in Australia and internationally. We have offices around the world that service different ventures, and offshore, that's mostly our B2B arm of the business. In Australia, we serve everyone from retail customers to small and medium business and large-scale enterprises. And as a brand, we're highly active on social media. We receive nearly 3,000 mentions on social media each day, and this includes anything from news sharing to commentary, complaints, and issues. There's a lot of issues, as you can imagine, being a telco, and you can see sort of that graph tracking our mentions over time there. Across the business, we have many teams and agencies that contribute to and manage our social brand presence, and that includes teams in retail, communications, HR, legal. I've got B2B and consumer marketing, and they're running across an assortment of social platforms. And through our footprint, we're really trying to create a positive experience for our audience. We offer 24/7 support on social media. We're constantly sharing content that allows us to tell Telstra's story, to grow our brand equity, and to sort of, through marketing, move people through the funnel, offer help, and as well, attract great talent to the company. But we also know that as a brand on social media, we're never going to be able to have the same impact that peer-to-peer conversations can have. And as I mentioned before, we have 33,000 employees at Telstra. So when you consider that every employee has a network of family and friends, that's quite a big influence that just our employee base can have. In the past, we've run programs to encourage our employees to help friends and family with Telstra issues that they might have. But historically, these programs have been very focused offline. We had one very successful program, which we still run, which is called Check-In, and that encourages employees to check in with friends and family and see how they're getting on, if they need any help with their Telstra service. We also have an app that we've created which allows employees to easily log any issues that friends and family raise with them, and then they can easily have these sort of quickly attended to by our customer service team to resolve that as fast as possible. Yet, while we are willing to let and encourage our employees to help our friends and family with Telstra issues and talk about them at, whether it's barbecues, kick soccer matches, or over the phone, for some reason, we are averse to doing that online through social channels. We had a social media policy and we had social media training in place. It was a core part of every employee's onboarding. But this curriculum really focused on what not to do, and it didn't offer employees guidance and tools to encourage them to use social media. So there was a really big gap. We knew that people trusted recommendations from peers and their friends and family more than any other source, and that's what you guys have sort of mentioned today in that poll. We also could see that social media use was growing exponentially. People turned to it for news and information, however trustworthy those sources may be, and people are more connected on social media than ever before. On LinkedIn, the data shows that the average person has 10 times as many connections as a company has followers. So our employees, who are our most credible advocates, have online networks comprising millions of Australians, and we weren't doing anything to give them the tools and the training to really positively influence the way that they viewed and connected with Telstra. So this big gap that we had became a really big opportunity. And that's when the Ignite social media program began to come to light. So step one to designing the program, and I'll flick ahead here. So step one to designing the program involved a lot of research. We knew that there was an appetite from employees, and that That's what we'd seen through check-in and the app that we developed. People were using it, but we needed to understand more about the aptitude and the attitudes towards social media use and training. So we started by doing a benchmarking study to understand how employees used social media, including any barriers to sharing Telstra-related news and content. We started with some external analysis initially to see what the level of activity was of employees on social media. And before I go into those results, I'd be really interested to see how many of you today share updates about your company or your employer on social media. So anything including announcements, news, jobs, and I'll get Lisa to load up the second poll. So if you want to track your responses in here. So is it something that you do frequently, every day you're sharing company news and updates? Is it something that you do fairly regularly or just every so often, or something you've never done? If you load them in. Give it a little bit more time. Okay, so the results are in. So we've had a lot of people say, over 50% say that they share company news and updates every so often, which I think is fairly typical. But there's also sort of 20% of people who've done it never, a few frequently, and some people that are doing it regularly. So that's good to see. We found really interesting results when we looked at what our employees were doing as well. We saw that under 15% of employees had posted about Telstra on social media platforms. And at that point in time, that was about 6,000 people. More than 23,000 people had identified as Telstra employees on LinkedIn, more than any other social channel that we looked at. But only 9 of these people had actually published to LinkedIn's publishing platform. And our CEO at the time, who was David Thodey, was the most active publisher of long-form content, and he triggered the vast majority of views and likes and comments. In fact, it was more than any of the other authors combined. On Twitter, we saw that very few employees identified as Telstra employees or shared Telstra content at all, but the platform did generate a really strong amount of positive sharing. So over the 3-month analysis period, we had 100 employees that all tweeted, that tweeted in total 900 times mentioning Telstra, and this generated more than 2,000 retweets about the company. At a leadership level, there were very few Telstra executives consistently active on social media beyond our CEO. So this research started to tell us that while some employees were on social media, not many were active. But of those that were active, they were generating really positive conversation. So to dig into these results a little bit further, we did some further research and we began to run a few internal surveys and some focus groups. And at this stage, we wanted to learn more about our employees' perceptions and mindsets towards social media. In particular, we were interested to find out what were the barriers that were preventing them from sharing Telstra news and stories. So the results that we started to see here showed us that, actually, sorry, I'll skip to the next slide. So if you can see on this table, this was some of the results that we saw. And the strongest feedback that we got was that people had a lack of confidence, followed by concerns with security and loss of productivity. And when we started to ask employees about existing social media training, 40% of them told us that they were cautious to post about Telstra and or they had a fear of being reprimanded. So lack of adequate training was also something that executives were raising. They flagged that time was, as well as not strong training, time was a big barrier to becoming active. And I suppose that's no surprise to learn that the more leadership responsibility someone has, the more support and coaching they're probably going to need. But conversely, the more visible a leader is, the more influential they can be, and the more important it is for them to be role models and to start to encourage employees to get active on social media. It became clear that tailoring our training approach for non-executive employees to our executive team and then our CEO's leadership team needed to be a consideration in the program design. And more broadly, the research showed us that we needed to improve how we talked about social media internally as a company. We had more than half of our survey respondents tell us that they wanted to share more news and information about the company on their social media channels, but they just needed the knowledge and the tools to do that. It was obvious that we needed to make a cultural shift, and how we were approaching social media was outdated. We needed to move on as a company. So we needed to start empowering our people to feel confident and comfortable to share Telstra stories, and we needed to support our executives to lead the way. So with that context on employee appetite and aptitude and attitudes towards social media, we felt we had some clear direction to be able to roll up our sleeves and start designing the program. Our goals were quite simple. One, we wanted to empower our employees to grow their social identity. We knew that the more engaged our employees were on social media, the greater their network and their influence becomes, and the more they're able to achieve their personal and professional goals. And two, we wanted to grow employee advocacy on social media about the company. As a company, we were committed to improving the experience of our customers. And if employees were empowered to share Telstra stories on social media and help their friends and family with issues whenever and wherever they arise, it could have a big impact on the overall brand experience. So I'll talk a little bit about what we did, and I'm going to talk about the program in two parts, which I think were really key to this program being successful. The first is that the program needed to be more than a training course. It's one thing to do training, but it's another thing to actually change a behaviour. So we needed to make it easy for employees to take what they learned and actually put that into practice. And then we needed a strategy to get our leaders involved in the program. To get this off the ground, we needed our leaders to be cheerleaders, and they needed to be seen to be active. If we're going to go any way towards changing the culture, that had to be a really core part of the program. So let's start by taking a look at the core program. There were three key elements to it. We had our mandatory training, which you can see on the left. We had a series of elective videos, and I'll talk a little bit more about each of these parts. And then finally, we had the social sharing app called LinkedIn Elevate. So we began by rewriting our social media policy. And with this, we shifted away from talking about what you couldn't do to talk more about what you could do and the opportunities that social media offered, both personally and professionally, for employees. And this policy then formed the basis of our mandatory social media training. And this training was an online interactive program that covered all the basics of social media, but we tried to keep it really light and engaging. For example, there was a social personality quiz that employees could take, and they could find out if they were the creative type or the careerist or the socialite. And then we also gave our employees real practical examples of how and why they might use social media, as well as some of the tools that could help them to do this. For example, one of the scenarios that we talk about in the program is what to do if the media tweets at you for a comment on a company issue, or if someone's complaining about Telstra service in your newsfeed, how do you respond, if at all? The second part of the program was a series of optional elective videos that anyone could do, and they covered a range of tips and tricks to get more from popular social media sites. So we had videos on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and even our internal social network, Yammer. They were really short, bite-sized videos from 2 to 5 minutes long, and we had employees from different parts of the company present them. And so now we've rolled out, I think, 8 electives in total, and we can continue to add more over time. But I thought I'd share a quick preview with you now of our most popular elective video, actually. And this one's called How to Be an Instagram Champion.
Hey everyone, my name is Lockie and I work in Telstra's Creative Services team. My pick of the social media platforms is Instagram, or the Gram as it's known. I've managed to build up a bit of a following over the last couple of years by posting lots and lots of pics just like these. Today I'm going to take you through how I use Instagram and some of the do's and don'ts I've learnt along the way. Once you've downloaded the app and created an account, posting a photo couldn't be easier. Hold down the camera image at the bottom of the app. You can either take a pic through the app or use one from your camera roll. Now the fun part. Crop if necessary, apply a filter, then make any further adjustments you want. The more you play around with the filters and settings, the more sense it'll all make. You can also use an app to edit your pics like Facetune. Add any description or hashtags, then post it to Instagram or your other social networks, and then you're done. Now, here's all the things I would have done differently if I had a time machine to go back to my 2011 Instagram self. The Instagram don'ts. Don't over-edit. You're not fooling anyone. Don't post everything. Well, I think that's an obvious one. Don't use too many irrelevant hashtags, and don't beg for followers in your comments. Nobody likes a desperado. And don't wait to post. Try to post it in the moment. The Instagram do's. Theme your feed, or at least be consistent in the way you edit your pics. Use hashtags if you want to reach a wider audience. Think about composition and having a clear focal point. Use natural lines and frames so the viewer knows where to look. Think about what time of day you post. AM posts are likely to be different to your PM pics. And if you want more likes, and we all do, midnight posts are a no-no. We call that the dead zone. Start snapping the pics of the things that make you happy. Food, travel, art, architecture, and my personal favourite, pets, are all fair game. So there you have it, a quick guide to Instagram. I'm Lockie, and thanks for watching. See you on the gram.
Great, so that was our most popular elective video, and that was presented by one of the guys in our creative services team at Telstra. So he was able to share his kind of tips and tricks for Instagram, which I think worked really well. And we got obviously quite a bit of positive feedback about, which was great. Now, the third part of the program was of the all company program was the Ignite Toolkit. Was the platform called LinkedIn Elevate, and this is a social sharing platform. So this is a really key tool that allowed us to help employees to increase their activity on social media and begin to grow their social identity. In essence, Elevate is basically it is a mobile app that allows employees to really easily discover and share relevant content with their social network on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. When an employee joins the tool, they can select from a range of interest areas that we've set up. So things like technology, entertainment, sustainability, careers in the workplace. And each day, we're sharing fresh articles to these feeds. And the content's not just Telstra content, it comes from across the web and a variety of sources. So The Verge, Business Insider, and Forbes. And having this balance between Telstra content and external content is really, really important. It not only just keeps our employees engaged, but it also helps to keep their networks engaged. So if you can imagine someone that you know in your network is sharing constantly just content about their company, you'd very quickly begin to disengage and probably block them from your feed. Another great aspect of this tool is that it allowed us to measure employee activity and engagement. And employees could see a dashboard of their personal stats and start to see their influence grow over time. And then the other great outcome that we've actually started to see is that Elevate has become quite a core communications channel for us. When we're creating comms plans for any PR or marketing initiatives, Elevate's often an important part of that mix to try and start driving authentic reach and engagement around the story. So these were the three key elements. You had the mandatory training, the elective videos, and then LinkedIn Elevate. And that made up the Ignite program for all employees. So the next step to developing the program was landing it successfully with more than 30,000 employees. And so to start doing that, we developed the key messages and then gave ourselves a little bit of license to have some fun. As part of the comms plan, it was really important that we articulated what was in it for the employee. We wanted our people to feel empowered to use social media, and we wanted them to be able to connect and collaborate, and where they felt comfortable, start to share Telstra's story in the way that was right for them. So we spoke about some of the main benefits of the program, and this was things like, social media can help you get noticed and grow your professional network on LinkedIn. We saw that employees that took part in our LinkedIn Elevate pilot that we run prior to launch actually attracted 3 times more profile views than those that weren't in the pilot but were on LinkedIn. You can use Twitter to stay across the latest news and witness events. You can grow your social identity to assert yourself as a leader online and strengthen your professional image. And also social media is a great way to explore passions outside of your work at Telstra. So for example, things like photography or your sports team, travel, or the local community. And then lastly, obviously, employees could use social media to start to change the way that people were talking about Telstra. To kick off the launch of the program, we really wanted to drum up the excitement and get people engaged. So we released a trailer video internally. And I've actually got that loaded in here, so I'll play that one for you.
Did you hear about Peter? He's gone viral.
Oh, poor thing. Got some echinacea tablets if he needs some.
Hey, don't forget, Sally's doing that yam jam at lunchtime.
Oh, sounds delicious, but I actually brought my own lunch today.
Oh, I love that photo from the weekend. Can you post it on my wall?
Yeah, sure.
Hey there. If you, like many, aren't sure where to start with social media, or you just want to learn about what it can do for you, you can be part of an exciting new Telstra initiative called Ignite. Ignite is a powerhouse of online training resources and elective videos developed by Telstra people to help you get the most out of the major social networks. We've also launched Elevate, a new app to help you share and discover content within your own network. Let's face it, today social media is everywhere. People are talking, tweeting, liking, sharing, connecting and commenting. In fact, Telstra is mentioned more than 100,000 times every month on social media. And that's a good thing, because we want to be ready to help and delight our customers, share ideas and find better ways of working together. And this isn't just a Gen Y thing. People of all ages are connecting on social media. In fact, 46% of all Facebook users are over 35. Social media is helping us connect better than ever before. The more people on board, the more powerful we are. Social media can help you build your personal professional image internally and externally. It can help you express your creativity. You can find breaking news and share information across a range of interests. And it can help keep you connected to friends, co-workers and loved ones. Oh, and social media can really make your achievements stand out amongst your peers. I think that deserves a retweet. So here's the thing. We know social media is a powerful tool for connecting people. As individuals and as Telstra, we've got a great opportunity to make the most of it. So get with the program, sign up to Ignite and unleash the power of social media in your life today.
Had a bit of fun releasing that video, and when we rolled it out, we released it with a series of corporate news articles as well, covering a range of different tips and tricks of what people could do to kind of quickly get onto social media and start to grow their social identity. When we officially launched the program, we also sent a personal invitation to the program to every employee from Jason Laird, who's Telstra's Chief Social Officer. And we were able to send these automatically, but they still came from Jason's inbox, and a real demonstration of his level of passion for this program. He was actually in there personally replying to the replies that he got from all over the company, from people sharing their stories of why or why not they were on social media and or didn't like it or they did like it. So I think he sort of enjoyed getting that feedback from people initially as well. Since launch, we've also run a series of activations to kind of maintain the engagement. We staged an event where we set up LinkedIn photo booths in our head offices in Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and also in Hong Kong. And employees could come along and get their profile photos taken. And this actually had an incredible amount of interest. We also run regular social media talks with speakers from different places. We've had NASA and Microsoft talk to us so far. And this is another really interesting way for us to get a glimpse at social media around the world and what other companies are doing, and sort of keep that inspiration alive and get employees involved. So that's a quick overview of how we approached the program to make it more than just a training course. We were able to communicate our policy, and then we gave employees the tools through the elective videos and through Elevate to start using social media to grow their social identity. And with our launch and sustained communications and activities, we've tried to not only drum up the excitement, but keep people engaged along the way. Now, the other piece to this plan that has been really critical to the success was driving leader activity on social media and support for the program. Not only are our leaders more visible externally and internally, but they have a really broad influence, and their ability to drive advocacy and promote and encourage social activity among their teams is obviously really strong. So I'll load one more quick poll in here to see among you, how active are executives at your company on social media? So I've got a couple of options. You've got very active. Many of them have a strong social presence on social media. Somewhat active. You have some active executives who are quite influential and doing a lot, or others that are not. A handful of them are active, or very few or none are active. And I'll get Lisa to load that poll up. We'll just give it a minute. Okay, so we've got some responses here. Overwhelmingly, people are saying that very few or none of their executives are active, or a handful of them are active. And that's pretty consistent with what we saw at Telstra as well. To approach how we kind of engaged our leaders and got them involved in the program, we decided to break them into two segments. And this was really based on their level of influence and then also the degree of support that they would need. So we had our Telstra executive team, which we call TET. That's our top sort of approximately 200 executives at Telstra. And then we had the next level up from that, which was our CEO leadership team. So that included our CEO and his direct reports. It was about 20 or so executives. So starting with TET, we invited them to take part in customised training, and we had 3 parts to this, which you can see on the screen here. There was a social reverse mentoring piece. This was a personalised coaching for from our social experts at Telstra. And to run this, we basically went out to the business and identified who were our most active and or influential employees on social media from around the company, and then invited them to become social media mentors. And the reason we took this approach was obviously because we had, almost 200 TET members, and the potential for the need for quite a few mentors to be part of the program. So we had to go broader than our core social media team to get support to do this activity. And then once we had recruited these reverse mentors, we did some training with them. We did an hour-long briefing session, and then we also got them to go through some advanced social media training. Once the mentors had completed this, we then partnered them with a TET member, and when doing this, we tried to think about both what was the TET members' main interest. Were they interested in learning about Twitter, or was it LinkedIn? And then we try and pair them up with a reverse mentor that perhaps was more focused on those areas. We had some who were really strong on Twitter and others who were really strong on LinkedIn or Elevate, and vice versa. And then the other things that we took into consideration was their location and also their business unit. The TEP mentee would then meet with their social media mentor once a month or more or less, depending on how they like to work. And they'd sit down and sort of talk about what it was that the TEP member wanted to get out of social media, and then some strategies and some tools that could help them do this. The second part of our executive training was the Yammer one-to-one training, and this was really to help our executives get more from our internal social media network. We found that building an active and engaged team on Yammer really created positive behaviour that could be replicated on external social media. So this training was run by the Yammer community management team and was mapped to the leaders' goals. And we'd sit down with them and share ideas on how they could engage their teams, drive collaboration, and ultimately improve the productivity. And then the last piece of the executive training was a series of social presentations that featured discussions with executives from different social media platforms. And the focus of this was really to get techniques and ideas from executives at these platforms such as Facebook or Twitter and LinkedIn that could be passed on to our executives. So it was much more relevant to them as opposed to having a broad sort of basic use cases for social media. And these series will, when we kick them off, will be live streamed and accessible to executives no matter what their time zone or location might be. Oops. And then the last part of our executive training was the part that we did specifically for our top 20 executives, so our CEO's leadership team. And for this, it was similar to the TEP program, but we went one step further and made it a little bit more hands-on again. So we actually sat down with these members and did one-to-one training with a member from our social media team, and then also their communications advisor. And these sessions were really, again, aimed at growing their presence on social media, but achieving sustainable activity. Similar to the TEP mentoring program, we would look at their priorities and their goals, and then we'd work with them on a plan to use social media. And the expectation for this plan really had to be around growing their social media footprint in a way that they could maintain over time. We needed to sort of help them understand that it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's something that does require a lot of attention and a bit of nurture and care to get to the point where you will have a strong social media footprint. Typically, we'd help them get started and sort of, maybe even set them up on their channels, share some advice, and then help them get onto a few tools such as Elevate, which could make their life easier and easily weave it into their day-to-day routines. So I guess a few results from this part of the program. We've seen about 26 TEP members, about 10% of the total TEP community, participate in social mentoring. We've had 47 of our TEP members participate in Yammer training, and 50% of our chief executive leadership team participate in one-to-one training. And then over that first 6 months since the launch of the actual program, the results that came out of doing this work with leaders around the company was that we saw an 85% increase in sharing activity on LinkedIn from these leaders. Their profile views increased nearly 40%, and new connections increased by 16%. So to us, that was a really strong indication that it was being received well, and it was starting to drive some results. More broadly, we've seen strong success across the program. If we look back at our objectives, we wanted to firstly empower employees to grow their social identity, and then secondly, grow employee advocacy on social media. So since we've launched the program, Telstra's employee network on LinkedIn has grown 23% year on year. And through Elevate, we quickly saw employee sharing increase 26% across Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn compared to our pre-launch levels. And now we see that employees on LinkedIn, they share content 6 times more than our employees our employees on LinkedIn Elevate share content 6 times more than our employees who are just on LinkedIn, which is a really strong indication that that tool is helping to put that activity into motion. Ignite has generated an increase in shares on Telstra content building our company brand and positive word of mouth. Across LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, employees have shared over 80,000 times since we launched. And that's resulted in 315,000 engagements and a reach of nearly 114 million people. Now we're about 12 months into the program, and completions of our Ignite training continue to grow, and our total registrations for Elevate actually make it now the largest deployment in Australia. When stacked against other companies using the platform, our employees have achieved 1.3 times the global benchmark for engagement per content share, which starts to signal that the audience they're reaching is both interested in and consuming the content that they're sharing. And the program has achieved a significant return on investment. The annualized earned media value of the organic content shares through Elevate is now close to 900,000. And then finally, the program has also helped to drive really strong employer brand results for us. So far, through Elevate, we've actually influenced 30% of Telstra hires on LinkedIn. So this program has helped us to develop a much more active and engaged workforce on social media. From our CEO down, it's beginning to prove that the more powerful and the more active we are on social media, the more we can drive positive outcomes for our customers and reach the audience that we want to be connecting with. So on that note, I'll leave it there, and I might open up to any questions. I noticed I've got a few coming in through the chat feed. So the first question I'll read out here is someone has asked, how did we do the external audit? Was that an agency? Yes, it was. We worked with an agency who basically used social listening data to work out, firstly, who was telling us that they were an employee of Telstra, and then also on top of that, who was mentioning Telstra that was also an employee of the company. And we were able to use that research to then work out what the level of activity was. I've had someone else ask how many resources supported the program. Yep, that's a very good question. So we had quite a small team. We did have some agency support. So as I mentioned, we had an agency support us with the external audit, and then we had another agency to design the program or come up with that proposal for us. And then internally, in terms of execution, we had one program lead, and we had our HR team who were working on more of the development and technical execution of building up the online training and the elective videos. In terms of some of the content that was produced, we worked with a production agency for that. So fairly nimble internally. There was probably, I suppose, 3 core people between the program manager and HR. Many stakeholders that did feed into the program along the way, and then obviously some agency support. Yeah, so someone else has asked, were executives given any KPIs or some kind of expectations in enhancing their involvement in social media, or were all being engaged voluntarily? Yes, so the executive program was optional, and we did, Jason Laird, again, our Chief Social Officer, sent an invitation out to all of the executives, invited them to the program, and then we worked with them based on their level of interest. In terms of KPIs, it was really about, it was definitely managed on a case-by-case basis. So it depended on what the TEP members wanted to get out of the program. And often they weren't very active to begin with. So it was mostly about building up a community, starting to be a bit more active, a bit more consistent on social media and sharing content. We did find that obviously, you know, different people respond to different kinds of incentives and success measures. So we were able to, through Elevate, we can see kind of the people's level of influence and who's growing the quickest. And so we'd share that kind of ladder of results, and that sometimes inspired people a lot. You know, if they're number 1 on the leaderboard versus number 5, that would drive a little bit of friendly competition. But yeah, it was very much on a case-by-case basis in how we measured executives' success. So I've had another question here. Will you consider adding content for sharing on Twitter or other platforms via Elevate? If not, what has made you select LinkedIn only? Yeah, so LinkedIn Elevate does allow you to share content, or employees to share content to Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook. And I think they're even expanding to more platforms. From our side of things, we're just curating the content and putting it in the tool for employees to share. So we pull it from a variety of sources. It's our internal stories that are published to different Telstra blogs, as well as I said, different sources around the web. And then it's up to the employees how they, or where they share that, what channels it goes to. I've had another question in regards to the timeline of this program and how long it ran for. So it's actually an ongoing program. It's been live for about 12 months now. The mandatory training, initially every employee had to go through that, and now it's just a standard part of all employees onboarding. And the elective videos are available to anyone whenever they wish to do them. Same with Elevate, that continues to be an app that we're actively managing, and we will continue to do. Yep. I've had someone ask about the long form content. Who was the main target audience for the long form content? So we have long form content that employees share on LinkedIn, and the audience for that is kind of their audience. So for instance, our CEO, David Thodey, I mentioned, he would actually write as an influencer on LinkedIn, and his audience was varied. Actually, it's largely the business community, domestically and abroad. But for other employees, you know, maybe they're in engineering or they're in communications, they write on a whole range of different subjects, and so their audience varies depending on what it is that they're talking about. I've had someone else ask, I see Andy Penn gets good engagement when he participates, however, he isn't as active as Thodey was. Is there a gap? Is the gap cultural, training, executive buy-in, or ROI? That's an interesting question. Yeah, Andy, we've been very lucky. We do have a very engaged and active leadership team, or particularly our CEOs have been quite active since Thodey. So it really is up to them. We obviously provide the support. It's available to them if they want it, but we also, through our CEO training program, the idea wasn't that we would do the activity for them. It was very much about giving them the tools and the training to do it for themselves. And we very much believe that as a person, you need to be talking on behalf of yourself. You don't want someone else doing that for you. It's less authentic, and they need to be engaging with their own communities. So yeah, I suppose to answer your question, I think it comes down to the person. Andy does certainly share quite a bit, but David was someone who very much loved getting in there, engaging with the community, and was quite active on social media. Okay. Okay, I've had someone else ask, why did you decide to go with LinkedIn Elevate? Yes, so I don't know if I didn't mention this, but basically LinkedIn Elevate is a tool that was developed by LinkedIn, and that's we work with them to use that. We did run a pilot before launching that tool across the business, and so we had I think approximately 200 employees across both two different tools that we were looking at using, and we measured the level of shares, reach, and engagement through those two tools. And then at the end of that pilot, we made a decision that the results and the measures demonstrated that LinkedIn Elevate was the better solution for us. And I think we've found over time that because it has that obviously very deep-rooted link to LinkedIn, we are able to get quite a bit out of it. So it's helpful, certainly from a measurement standpoint. Okay, and I've had someone else ask, what was the silver bullet to mobilise your people to want to participate? Was it the visibility of leaders modelling the behaviour, tapping their personal motivations, or something else? Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think there's a few elements to the answer to that. So obviously through the program, we tried to make it as engaging and as exciting as possible. And I think that's where our core messages also played a really important role. We wanted to make sure that for employees, because historically our training or our policy had very much been about what not to do on social media. This time it was about changing the culture and showing employees what the opportunity was for them, both professionally and personally. While we wanted them to share Telstra's stories, and that's a great outcome of it, it's also great for us if they are talking about what they're doing in the industry on a day-to-day basis. If you're an engineer, what's the latest innovations, and building up an influence on social media. So really, we wanted to inspire them, and that's what we aim to do through our program and through the communications to then get active. But that last step of actually getting active, obviously that's on them. We can't force them to do that. I think leadership and the executives certainly plays a really important role in this. If we didn't have such strong CEO support, and also Jason, as our Chief Social Officer, was a huge advocate for the program, without their influence and drive as well, it would be much harder to get off the ground. So having that executive buy-in is super important. And then also on a team-by-team basis. Obviously, I think I mentioned some of the feedback that we got through our conversations with employees before we actually kicked off the program was that even some mentioning that they had a fear of being reprimanded. So we needed to change that. We needed to make sure that people leaders were encouraging of using social media, and that that they saw the benefit and they were able to pass that on to their teams. So there was a few different elements at play that sort of helped to mobilize people around social media. So one more question, or a couple more questions, I suppose we have time for. Have you found it challenging to find relevant content to populate for employees to share? What is the most popular type of content? Do you create content specifically? Yeah, that's a really good question. So no, I don't think we do find it challenging to find content. There is a whole wealth of content online, obviously, through external sources, but also internally, we're creating a lot of content across our different blogs, and we have consistently got great stories that we're surfacing across the company that we can share out via Elevate with our employees. In terms of what gets the most engagement or is most popular with employees, I think we actually get a lot of engagement with the sustainability, corporate social responsibility stories. Interestingly, I think they're quite. I think they're quite proud of that type of activity that we're doing as a company. So anything around volunteering or gender equality, all of those sorts of things, when we share content or new stories that illustrate that and showcase demonstrations of that, people really respond well. And then I suppose the other topic that we get quite a bit of engagement on is technology stories, because as Telstra, we are transitioning to become a technology company, and that's really what our workforce is rallying around at the moment, and people are really interested and inspired by that kind of content. So that's where we probably see the strongest response. And then another question here, apart from the videos, how did you populate or promote the modules or the campaign in general? Email blasts, where did you place the videos? Yeah, so we have, we kicked it off with an email that went out to all employees from Jason led, and it was basically a personal email. So that sort of launched it, as well as all of the support that we had around that. So we had, as I mentioned, corporate news stories talking about social media and tips and tricks to get the most from it. We had our hype reel that we shared out on our internal intranet as well as Yammer. We did do quite a bit of activity on Yammer to promote the program. We had content produced for the channel, as well as a lot of engagement there with people as they asked questions or were seeking information. And then we also shared with all of the different all the business units, their leadership teams were kind of provided a lot more information on the program and encouraged to talk about it with their teams so that they could get involved. Because the core module was a mandatory piece of our training program at Telstra, every employee was expected to go through that. And then at the end of that program, during the program, we talk about the elective videos and LinkedIn Elevate, but then at the end of the program, you're also prompted to sign up for Elevate and start getting active on social media. So there was that additional prompter at the end, which I think was really important. You need that call to action to get people to take the next step, which also helped. Someone's asked, have you qualified ROE in dollar terms? So our measures for this program are really around the amount of reach and engagement we get with it. But as I mentioned, we have seen a huge amount of earned media off the back of it, which is essentially employees sharing our content for us. And so we have been able to quantify that, and that number was close to 1 million, which is really strong. And then outside of that, basically our number of employees that are engaged with the program, and then the amount of engagement and positive sharing that they're able to drive is what we're really looking to do. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I might close it out there. I'm happy to continue answering some at a later date. If you want to reach out on LinkedIn or email, that's fine. But otherwise, yes, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Beck. Thank you so much for your time today. What a fabulous topic. I will be sending out a recording to this webinar to everyone who joined, as well as those who registered and weren't able to join. I'll also be sending out a survey, so please do complete that. It really helps us to make sure that we're delivering the right content to you. So thank you everyone for attending, and we look forward to presenting the next webinar to you in July, and to seeing you all hopefully at Regional Conference in Singapore in August. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.